Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to Health Oddity. It's episode 108. Thanks for being on this journey for the last 2 years. We continue to have some fantastic guests. Before we go into that, the usual kind of podcast admin, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast as much as possible. We can only grow if you tell your friends about it, if you subscribe, and you just, do some of the work for us. That would be really helpful. But how are my two usual co-hosts? They've given me the reins today, which is always... There's always a sense of fear in their eyes whenever I take the microphone to lead these things. Why don't we start with you, James? Because you're not often neglected in these circumstances. You're a bit chilly today.
We thought as you'd made the effort to turn up, we'd let you do the intro today. I am a bit chilly. First time wearing a hoodie since last winter, so it is getting cooler. But yeah, everything's great. Looking forward to heading up to Northampton on Saturday to see Lauren, Finbar, and Ben, all former guests on the Health Oddity podcast, competing in the British Pentathlon.
Oh wow!
Kettlebell event. Yeah, so looking forward to going up to see them, see how they get on.
Are they part of the national team?
They're part of Finbar's Virtue team from Belfast. Yeah, so they're going to be competing as a team there. I've got my t-shirt ready to wear to support them and go up and see that. So that's going to be good fun. And
you got a big foam finger.
Big foam finger, yeah. Glad hands.
You must sell those on your merchandise.
Glad hands. Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're just going to jam James's hand between two kettlebells, and then it'll expand anyway.
Yeah,
and then he can just do that.
We've all done it. I've hit my knee with a kettlebell before plenty of times.
No, but everything's good. Training's good. Gym's good. And just looking forward to that this weekend. So, yeah.
Well, it's good. As I said before we came on camera, it's good to see all that cold water exposure is giving you resilience. New colder climates. I had to get that one in there, didn't I?
Absolutely.
Peter.
Well, I haven't got a hoodie on, because I'm from Newcastle, so therefore, and from Newcastle, living in Bath, it's tropical around here. Mm-hmm. It's honestly, I think I wear a hoodie like once a year.
It's surprising to see you with a top on, in fact.
I know, and that's proper cold exposure is just growing up in the Northeast in the 80s, mate. That's all you need. You're done then. But yeah, there you go. Anyway, I need to give a shout out to friend of the show, Chris Denning, who I met up with. When was it? Last week, the week before? So Chris was over here for his holidays. His family are from Reading, I think, or near there. So he was over visiting, and he loves Bath, so he came along. So I met him and his family, and we had a nice little wander around and took the dog.
So he didn't just travel halfway across the road to the world to see you, then?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All because of that. So this, I don't know whether this is a good thing to do or not, but that's two friends of the show who've been to Bath, and I've got pictures with and said hello to and that. So start the deluge.
Well, I saw Yay Burpees, who we just spoken about. He was in London. He didn't see me. He didn't come to visit me.
Well,
in fact, I think he avoided me.
We'll be seeing him, friend of the show, this weekend. He's going to be there as well. So I'm off to Northampton with James as well. Well, not with James. We don't do everything together. But yeah, I'm going up for that as well. So that'll be good.
Cool. Okay. Well, so it brings me to my guest. Those of you.
Your guest.
My guest, yeah. I invited Glenn. Glenn, how you doing, Glenn?
Hi, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Not bad. This is basically like having an awkward conversation with three people.
All of my conversations, brilliant.
No, but Glenn's fantastic. I know Glenn. I've trained with Glenn. And any of you who've spent any time on his Instagram account will know that Glenn is a formidable athlete in his own right, but also someone with a deep knowledge on how to get strong, how to take care of yourself, and is totally committed himself to making other people better better in terms of their strength, better in terms of the way they think about their mindset when it comes to their health, better around nutrition, and always putting out amazing content. And obviously I've been following that. I've trained, we have a mutual friend. My wife works for his father, but we train together, and it's great in London to connect with another trainer, particularly one such as Glenn, who's awesome athlete with so much knowledge. So we trained together. We did some kettlebell sport. Yeah, that was a tough workout. I think we had a bit of fun there, and we kind of talk shop. But if I go through the Glenn's Instagram page, I can see that he knows a lot of the same people we do. So this kind of chat should have come a bit sooner, really. So it's fantastic to have you on here. Glenn's based in London. He's a trainer. He works with so many different people in different populations, but I don't want to talk too much. Glenn, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was way too many awesomes in the introduction, but thank you very much for being so complimentary.
No, that's all right. So, well, one of the reasons I got Glenn on the podcast is because we've had some of the best thought leaders in the world kind of talking about kind of their specialisms, and one of which was the back specialist, Stuart McGill. And Stuart obviously leads the world in his knowledge of how to kind of not only rehabilitate people with, difficult injuries around their spine, but also in terms of the research he's done. And Glenn has a lot of the things we talked about. Glenn has done, level 3 with the McGill Institute.
That's right,
Yeah. So what I was interested in, and obviously we'll talk about loads of different things on this podcast, but where I want to start is a little bit of a background about what got you into fitness, where you've come from, but also kind of what led you down the path where you started to explore these other kind of ways of working with clients that got you to this level 3 McGill accreditation.
Yeah, it seems like a sort of a crazy long journey, really, but ultimately it started off with growing up in a household with a very South African dad who was very active. You mentioned my Instagram. I posted with him the other day because I had a workout with him. He's 65 and puts most people, our age to shame in terms of how fit he is. So that was the house I grew up in with 2 brothers, and we all sort of got involved in every sport that we could and in every martial art that we could get involved with as well. So, all the way through school and teenage years, we would just being active was completely normal. It wasn't something like you went to go do exercise. It was just part of your life. You took care of your mind at school. You took care of your spirituality wherever you took care of your spirituality. You took care of your body every day. It was just part of looking after yourself. And then I went a completely different route as a result of it not being something that was sort of a career-driven habit. I ended up doing a degree in business, and then ended up graduating into the recession, which wasn't much fun, I think, for anyone. And after about a decade working in sort of normal work and hating my alarm clock every day, I decided to make a change in my early 20s and follow something that was more passion-led rather than sort of the urge to earn as much as possible, despite how it made me feel about my life, and totally changed direction. And when I changed direction, it was much earlier alarm clocks. The life of being a coach, being a trainer. My alarm clock this morning went off at 5 to 5, but I'm happy with it every single day because the way that I get to live my life, the people I get to work with, and the effect that we have on people, whether it's the emotional effect that you have on someone at the end of an hour spent with them, or taking someone through a journey of being chronically in pain with their back, to then leaving them where they're no longer in pain, living with pain-free moments that we accumulate into pain-free days, weeks, and months, and then getting them back to being active people. So it's a fantastic way to spend my day. And I say to my clients all the time, I feel privileged to be chosen by each one of them to help them on whatever journey they're on. But I sort of went through that journey and became a quote unquote normal personal trainer for a while, and cut my teeth in gyms and working privately with clients as well, and then worked with the company Matt Roberts. I don't know if many of you have heard of them. Yep, lots of nodding heads, which was useful because it kind of showed me what I didn't want to do. nothing wrong with Matt Roberts and that whole model at all, but it just sort of angled me towards a part of the industry that I didn't enjoy very much. It became too, I guess, superficial and too, I don't know, I guess vain. And I just felt like it wasn't exemplary of health and fitness if you sort of break down what those two things mean to you. And I know Dan John has spoken a lot about being fit is everything fitting together. It's like a congruency of what you want to be doing with your life, as well as your physicality, as well as your relationships. All of that must fit together. And when I looked at that part of the industry, it wasn't fit. It wasn't fit people. They weren't mentally happy people. They didn't have good eating habits. They didn't have training habits that made sense to me. It just didn't speak to me, really. And
what is it that kind of, because we all go into the fitness industry thinking, having viewpoints, having opinions about what we're going to do. I mean, you went in, you've got great level of fitness and strength already, and then you're working with general populations. What did you expect, and what did you see?
I guess I expected there to be more gratitude from everyone. I expected just a more gracious atmosphere everywhere, whether it was from my peers around me, to be more gracious in the way that they worked with people, more gratitude in terms of the clientele as well, because we spend our lives really working hard for them. I think the best trainers do. You know, you sort of agonize over the people that you aren't serving as best as possible, where the helps, tips, habits that you're giving them aren't landing for whatever reason. They're just not being able to incorporate them into their lives, or whether the cues you're giving them for an exercise aren't working. Like you agonize over these things. So I guess I expected people to understand the amount of effort and energy and emotion that you put into the work. And then I expected more people to have less of a sort of narcissistic approach to this journey. And I think having been a kid that was obsessed with like bodybuilding and Arnie and that whole look of the industry, it was never foreign to me to want to pursue an aesthetic physique. But the sort of personality trait that went along with that, or often goes along with that, was not something that I enjoyed. It's not something that I have in a friendship group or in my other relationships. There isn't like this indulgence of narcissism. And because I grew up in a house where movement and exercise and martial arts was just normal, being strong was about performance, not about presentation necessarily, or recognition from your peers that you had 1% less body fat than the guy next to you, or whatever. So I found that quite a challenging little journey to go through, especially because of the area that I was working in. With that company specifically, you were sort of treated just like the help. You know, I had plenty of clients who were nice people in their own right, but actually treated you like an object a lot of the time, and might use a sweat towel and chuck it at you because you're just the help. And actually,
was this kind of like is this in like Mayfair or something like this, isn't it? Some of the clubs around, so it's almost like you're treated like a barista or a waiter or something to these people. You know, not that anyone should be treated like that, but you know, you can see that. I can see how that can kind of come across if you're working in that environment. You know, I do my best to be the best version of myself all the time. That means polite and friendly and helpful and all the rest of it. And so when you put that out there, and what you're met with is, genuine quote, guys, "You're here to count my reps." When you're met with that, it's like, that didn't feel nice. You didn't treat me like a person there, you know. So after doing that for a while, and you know, waking up at 4:45 in order to open up the shop, and then sleeping for an hour midday, getting in a quick workout and getting back in to close up at 10, it's exhausting. And I just felt like I moved over to this industry to pursue something I love, and it's slowly being destroyed a little bit.
And that's when there was I think that there was one of the first years that at Earl's Court there was a big fitness expo.
Mhm.
And I went with my wife, who at the time had just left the fitness industry for different reasons. She transitioned in her career to something else completely. But we both went to the exposition because we both love health and fitness, and we just wanted to see what was being put out there. We wanted to maybe meet some of the big names. I knew that Eddie Hall would be there, and Simeon Panda, and a few of those guys. So we went to the expo. Thousands of people, loads of stalls, lots of examples of the fitness industry on display. That's what I hoped. But actually, there was only one example of the fitness industry on display. And to coin a phrase that my wife used at the time, it was a lot of hungry orange people, because everyone's dieted down like crazy, fake tanned themselves, and is selling somebody else's supplement. And after having been at the exposition for an hour and a half to 2 hours, we left, and we went and got a coffee. And I sat there in silence, just sort of staring at the foam of my coffee for a while. And Zara said to me, like, my wife Zara said to me, what's wrong? This isn't your energy normally. I said, I cannot believe that I've done all this work to move industries and career for that to be what I'm associated with. Like, for me to say I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, or I work in health and fitness, and for people to maybe have that sort of snap association to that's what I represent. So we just sort of left it on that note, and it was an important realization. And then Zara had a bad back injury, like a really horrible disc herniation. She loves running and would frequently do sort of 40, 50K a week on the roads, that sort of thing. So she really loved running. And her back injury stopped her from turning over in bed without pain, let alone running. And the person who she happened to see to help her was Joel Proskowitz. And if you know Stu McGill, Joel Proskowitz is the next name in the line, really. I mean, there's Ed Campbell and there's a few other guys, but Joel is the guy in the UK, and he stands alone as the master clinician in the UK. He's really exceptional. And she saw Joel, and Joel, over the course of 18 months, fully rehabilitated her, and in the process evangelized her. And she said, I think her and I, we have been searching for this direction that I need within this industry. And that led to me booking onto McGill's course, Stu McGill's course. It was one of those very fortunate courses that happened to be in Eindhoven in Holland. And I booked on even before my wife was pregnant. And then it happened to be 6 weeks after my son was born that the course was being held. And I very nearly cancelled and didn't go, because I thought, here I have a 6-week-old. I can't possibly leave my wife, my 6-week-old, and just disappear off for 5-6 days. But fortunately, she sort of really said, like, all right, get out, you've got my permission, go do it. I'll manage, we'll survive. And I spent the weekend with Ed Campbell, with Joel, with Professor McGill, and just indulged in that process of learning, and haven't stopped since. I've surrounded myself with his books and his literature, and it's what I listen to in the car. I listen to you guys in the car. I listen to anything I can get my hands on that keep me learning, because that journey is addictive. And I feel so much happier knowing that I can serve people that need help in the industry, rather than helping people get to stage, which is a great goal on its own. It's just didn't interest me.
I think that's a great story, because I think it'll resonate. So our listeners, I don't think we spoke about this before we started recording, but our listeners tend to be, there'll be people who want to know what, not necessarily know what to do. They just want to do something and get involved, or they're involved and they want to know where to go next. Mm-hmm. And you can easily get put off by that, can't you? In like you've just said, in any industry or anywhere, you can get into it and go, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So I'm off, I'm done, I'm out. It doesn't represent me. Whereas you've taken the route that I think we've all taken on here right now of that doesn't represent me. So what does? And I actually put a post up about this yesterday, because where I used to work, before I was in this industry, I didn't fit in, but I became the person who did. And then I was like, I'm not me. So and then I got out of it, and I am me. And that's exactly what you've done, which is brilliant. So rather than say, I'm out, I'm done, you're now like, right, how can I actually properly help people here? And that is, I love that. It is brilliant.
But the message is quite simple when it comes to aesthetics, isn't it? Because you can just put a picture, you can just, it's everywhere. When we talk about fitness, probably something that jumps into someone's head is a certain kind of image.
Well, everyone does that, don't they?
Yeah, they do that. They got six-pack abs.
The bicep,
You got very, very simple kind of visualizations to work with. But then, on the other hand, typically when someone is in pain or someone has a dysfunction, and I think most people, myself included, when you look down at it, we've all got movement dysfunctions, we've all got kind of compensations, we've all got those kind of things, some worse than others, some that doesn't stop people. But, that typically they won't go to a strength and conditioning coach. They won't go to a personal trainer. They'll seek out pain cessation through physios. They'll see it through the doctor. And so the kind of picture you're painting, is this mean that you're reaching out to people in a different way? Are you talking to people differently? I mean, do you capture them in one way and then take them on a journey, kind of like almost like through the back door, you've kind of introduced them to these other principles? I mean, where do you fit now?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating process. And I think that the role of being a coach is, it's as complicated as you want it to be, or it's as convoluted and dynamic as you want it to be. But I work not necessarily hand in hand with my wife. She's a psychotherapist, my wife now, so she's been doing that for the last half decade or so. I don't work hand in hand with her as in sharing clients, but what I do is lean on her in terms of how best to communicate with someone that might be seeing me in place of therapy, because actually they want to train. They might need to speak to someone as well about some other issues going on in their life. But I'm sure we've all experienced this. The moment the session starts, mouths open, and all of their troubles come out, whether it's with their spouse or their kids or their in-laws or their finances, whatever. So you serve a similar role in many ways, and being able to draw from her knowledge base and her ability to communicate in a way that doesn't close doors but opens doors allows me to hopefully become better at asking questions to which the answer is the message I'm trying to send. Because if they come up with the answer, it lands much harder than if I just tell them, we need to address this thing and we need to change the way you do X, Y, and Z and habits and blah, blah, blah. So I think that, the way that I sort of backdoor information into their lives is through like a carefully structured way of building a relationship with them where they can trust me and the information I'm sharing with them, where I can give them small or big wins, whether it's the way that they're moving, strength that they're gaining, pain that they're moving away from. If I can give them those wins, it consolidates that trust. And then try and show them with one habit change, or with I do quite a lot of habit stacking with my clients. So if they're boiling the kettle or brushing their teeth, they're already doing something. Can we stack something on top of that that's going to then have a ricochet effect? So they're more willing to try little things like that.
You're right, because the challenge is when you've got a lot of knowledge of a particular area, or you've achieved your own level of results, or you've got a passion for a particular area of your knowledge base, it's very easy to sit there and just talk at someone, isn't it? And you kind of you hit the nail on the head. I think generally the answer comes from the individual, doesn't it? And it's knowing when to drop a piece of information that's useful, but also to shut your mouth, isn't it? And let the other person come up with the response that essentially they're going to come up with their own plan. You're just guiding them. So these are the doors. Here's some consequences of these choices. What do you think the best route is for you, kind of thing?
Exactly. And weirdly enough, I've sort of taken something from the world of stand-up comedy as well, because there's such a satisfying moment when you're watching a stand-up. They sort of build this story or a joke early in their set. They'll land a good joke you'll all laugh out loud. An hour later, they'll say one word that refers you back to that thing, and the laugh is exponentially larger, and the good feelings are that much greater because you feel like you're in on something. So quite often I'll do that with clients quite purposefully, that I'll create a little story or a narrative at the beginning of the session. We'll do something, and midway through the session, they may accomplish or notice more stability in a joint, or accomplish a lift that they hadn't done before. And that one word, that one cue, that one tag that I had in the story is given to them again. They go, that's why you said that thing. Now I feel like I'm part of this little lifters club or whatever it is. And relationships build slowly, but they build with real certain steps, like very solid strides in the right direction when you do that, I feel.
And where are you working now, Glenn? I know you're very, your social media is very sort of strong and things, but when you're working with individuals, are you working in a facility, or are you working more online, kind of virtually with people, or where are you based, and how do you operate now?
I'm sort of all over the place, to be honest, because less than a year ago, we moved from North London to south of the river. And so some of my clients are still sort of north, and some are closer to me here. I tend to split my days, Monday and Friday I stay south of the river. The other 3 days I still see all of the people that I used to see before. But because of social media, I do see quite a few people online as well. Some of that is active work, in that it's one-to-one sessions online like this. And some of that is passive work, people getting in touch with me because of the kettlebell work that I do, saying, I want to accomplish whatever goal. And a lot of people have contacted me saying, I've also given up my gym membership. COVID taught me that I didn't need it, or whatever taught me I didn't need it, or I've just had a kid and I don't have the time to travel half an hour in each direction, whatever. So they asked me to help them in that way. So there's a few ways that I work. And actually, I really enjoy that dynamic part to my week, that I'm not just doing one thing. I'm not just a strength coach or a kettlebell coach, but actually I'm a lower back pain coach to about 50% of the one-to-one work I do. And then online, it's fairly spread as well. Actually, just recently I had someone in India contact me through my social media and say that it was a couple posts that I made that he followed that have reduced his back pain more than anything else in the last 4 years or so. Could he do a session like this? And I really try and encourage people with lower back pain stuff to see someone in person, to go to their local practitioner, really wherever possible. I really try and push back on those sessions as much as I can. But he wasn't having any of it. And actually what we ended up doing was having a conversation that looked a lot like this to me, because I had an interpreter and him, and the go-between was really interesting to try and manage, because I knew that if I'm trying to explain Spondy to him, it's got to go through whatever vocabulary the translator has to that guy. Then he's going to go back, and whatever comes back to me is such a mess of Chinese whispers. It's been a really fascinating way to sort of learn how to use coaching cues in a non-verbal way to get them to land better with him.
So one of the reasons I was interested to get you on is because obviously we sat down with Stuart McGill, and we've kind of had a chat about his methodology and kind of some of his thoughts about things. But what I'm interested to know is kind of, how do you implement that? What is the as someone who's gone through those courses, what exactly are you implementing? How are you interpreting that, and what is actually useful, and what do you leave to one side?
So what do you mean by that?
So obviously he's got the McGill, is it a foundation or institute? Yeah. So that they have obviously training up people in different tiers of expertise. They'll have, certain higher level qualifications. Then they'll have people who come in with different kind of expectations of how to apply it. Because it's one thing having Stuart McGill doing it, and it's another thing then communicating that out to people, and then you using it. You're not a physio, are you? You're not a doctor.
No.
You're a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer,
Mhm.
you know, lifestyle coach, mindset coach. How are you then utilizing that practical solution to probably the most common complaint for any client? I've
Mhm.
got back pain, you know.
You know, I think the first thing that it gave me, the first thing that the qualification gave me was an understanding of how much I don't know, firstly, and then the confidence to frequently, as you'll hear Professor McGill say, more than anything else, he's worn it out. He says it depends as an answer to almost everything, right?
He was the first ever person to say that, I think, and now everyone's saying it.
Absolutely. Do you know, the confidence to walk into a room and know the things you know, say it depends to the things you need more information on, and to admit knowledge missing from the things you don't know, it actually gives the client a tremendous amount of confidence in you to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but I will investigate. And if I find the answer, I can share it with you. And if I don't, I'm going to send you to the right person who will know the answer. I think that's so rare in this industry where everyone sort of puffs their chest out and wants to look like the best, biggest, most confident, infallible version of themselves. But actually, I think that what people in general respect more than that is honesty, confidence in doing the things you do well, and taking the time to do them. And then when you need to say, I don't know, admitting that. And when it comes to how I use my certification as a back specialist, I think it changed. I mean, I don't know if it'd be too far to say everything that I do, but it'd be pretty close, because the way you see movement completely transforms. The detail with which you see hinge points and stress points that accumulate in the way that someone moves completely changes. And then as a result, I had the confidence to say to clients, do you know what, this session, what we're going to do is reassess X and Y and implement this, and see if we can make a 5% improvement on the discrepancy of mobility from right ankle to left, because it's affecting everything up the chain from that, and reteach you the most basic of bracing habits and movement patterns. Because if we take the time to do this today, we're going to get so much more bang for our buck later on down the line. And you know, one of the cockiest things I will ever say to a client was given to me by my first mentor in this industry, who helped me sort of structure a business around what I do now. He said to me, look, if you believe in what you do, think of yourself like Mac or Macintosh computers, the Apple Mac products. They don't go on sale. They don't have package deals. They don't get viruses, and the user doesn't know that they don't get viruses. And that's the line that I tend to use. It's that when I'm working with a client, I'm going to take care of things and have the confidence to regress things to a level that is going to ensure that we don't get viruses or injuries or movement discrepancies. And they'll never know or recognize that that's what we did in order to achieve injury-free training for 5 years on the trot, whilst continually getting stronger or better at the sport that they're doing.
So do you see then we haven't really touched on yet kind of how you became introduced to kettlebells and that sort of things. I know that's on your Instagram, especially. That's a big part of it. So we can talk about that maybe in a minute, which should be really interesting. But do you the McGill training and qualifications that you have, does that kind of intersect and overlap with the kettlebell work that you do, or do you see that the kind of the back specialist work and the kettlebell work are kind of almost separate, or do they really connect at points?
It's that Dan John thing. Everything, if you're fit, it all fits together. Actually, when I took the certification, when I got it, I thought this is going to be difficult. I'm going to have to be a lower back pain coach and then change hats and be a strength coach that loves kettlebells. And in actuality, I think it does something quite important for the kettlebell industry to see that actually a back pain specialist can train with really heavy kettlebells without back pain consistently, because that's a misnomer I think we've all heard 1,000 times round dinner tables, where there isn't necessarily fitness experts around the table, but sort of Joe Blogs, and he'll say, oh, don't swings hurt your back. Well,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say Denis Vasiliev, he gets, I remember seeing an interview with him, and obviously kettlebell sport world champion with probably 20 years of kettlebell sport under his belt. And they see him with the 2 kettlebells in the rack, and they see that curvature of the spine, and they say, won't that destroy your back? And I'm sure you get it, Peter, when people are walking past in the park.
Oh, look,
you're going to
all
hurt
the
their
time.
backs.
I've got, actually, that's just reminded me of something. And this is a good question to ask Glenn, actually, is you see people. So thinking about how the central nervous system works and how people feel pain and what have you, you can create pain in your body just by thinking about it, right? You can do that. Because it all comes from the brain anyway. The pain isn't in the area, it's in the brain, isn't it? So I get people in the park who walk past, they'll see someone doing something. You get, like I say, you get all sorts. So you get people, that's brilliant, I love it, and and all that. But you'll get someone going like, oh God, it hurts my back to even watch that. And then, and it can happen. So you can watch someone go and pick something up in a bad way.
Yeah.
I don't get it because, I know how to lift and all that, but like you get someone else who will watch it and go, oh, that hurts my back to even see that.
I used to get that with my knees when I used to watch people do long jump.
Yeah. So you can actually have physical pain in your body from watching someone else do something that would hurt you. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside from what Paul was saying there. But I mean, how do you deal with that? Because people have possibly felt this for years, and obviously you're going to help them out of it physically, but there's a mental aspect to it as well, isn't there? So how, and you've already alluded to this about like the language you use and stuff like that. So does that come into it massively as well? Into any sort of session you do with a back pain client?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think my image, my language, all of it is somewhat considered. Until I think when we trained together, Paul, pretty sure I had a mohawk.
No, you just got rid of it.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Well, for a long time, I had a big pink mohawk.
What, okay. Had you been watching Cobra Kai?
No, I haven't.
He got rid of his as well, didn't he? Have you got a massive?
I was going to watch it, and a friend of mine said to me, "If you love Daniel's son from when you were growing up, don't watch this one." I don't know how fair that was. I just haven't watched it, and it's also not the kind of show I can watch with my wife, so I'd have to stay up later to watch it. Anyway, there might even be one up there of me with a mohawk somewhere. But anyway, but my point is that when you show up to someone in back pain, someone who has been living in their pain, because if you're in chronic pain, there is no part of your day, there is no part of that stumble to the toilet in the middle of the night, none of it is free from pain. You're always considering it, always seeing the world through the lens of, will this hurt? I'm waiting for it to hurt. Look how much this hurts. One I love is, when I do this, it hurts. Like, stop doing it.
Well, Stuart McGill said that. He said people lean into their pain, don't they? It's like, well, stop it.
Stop doing it. Yeah, exactly. So when then I show up in like a slightly too tight shirt and a big mohawk, you put the person off immediately. They already think you're a thug. You look like the entry-level bad guy in every B-rate movie. And so when I moved to the other side of London, to the upper crust of Surrey, I decided to shave the mohawk off and ingratiate myself to the local community with a little more ease. So that's part of it. But then I think humor plays a big role. Actually, you've got to know the person in front of you to an extent to know where their line is for humor, whether or not you can use certain language to kick them out of a normal sort of brain rhythm they go through in the way that they think of themselves or the way that they think of pain or whatever. But you'll all know this from your own training experience, that we've all been training with focus and intent, and something will make you laugh and you cannot hold tension when you're laughing. So actually, to give someone the ability to unconsciously or without purpose just relieve the tension in their body and then go back into what you were doing. So that comment that you made a moment ago, Peter, about having someone put pain in your client's mind by saying, oh, if I lifted that, I would immediately make some off the cuff joke about either to that stranger, who I don't care if I offend because they're walking away and they're a stranger, or not offend, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Just slightly more considerate of my client. If they're going to be robust in the kind of comment I'm going to make, I'm going to ramp it up. And if they're an slightly older person that is less robust with their humor, I'll turn it down. But either way, the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, if you can use humor in that moment, you can dispel this weird little situation that's just walked into your session, and you can readdress the person that's in front of you that's important, your client, and have the whole thing shake off that weird moment that could have been like, that was uncomfortable, or I didn't need that comment, or now I've had to deal with this stranger in a way that makes me look like a bouncer in some strange way, you know. So I think humor is quite important, and I use that quite a lot in my sessions in the right way. When I was in my mid-teens, my dad took I've got 2 younger brothers, he took 3 of us to a Tony Robbins event. I don't want to get into the weeds of what we all think about, you know, self-help type stuff, but the point is that he made he took a moment to sort of show that the language you use, the sort of NLP, if you like, of knocking someone out of their normal rhythms of thinking can be done with a word, be done with one simple statement. And it's actually a wonderful, powerful tool that you can use. I love to use it in the parameters of back pain work because it's so serious. Back pain work is so serious. And if you can make a joke or knock someone out of that normal sort of rhythm of what they've been thinking and what they expect to take place here, you get to start with close to a clean slate, at least for that moment. So
it's pattern interrupt. I've done a course called PDTR, which is proprioceptive deep tendon reflex, it's called. And the guy who was teaching that, he's this guy from Cardiff, and he's really tall, a guy called Steve, and he's really tall. But he said, once you've got someone thinking about the pain, because you've been doing whatever it is, then it's really hard for them to stop thinking about it. Like you've just been saying. So therefore, if you're trying to, does this hurt? Yes. Does it? Everything's going to hurt because they're thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So he said he was talking about the pattern interrupt. So he'd be having like a patient on the table, and he'd be talking away, and then he'd be like, all right, and then they're like into it, thinking about the pain, and he'd go, all right. He'd go, I was talking about builder the other day because I'm having some work done in the house, and we're going to get a dwarf wall built out the back. And he goes, but I still don't know how high that is. He goes, because I'm really tall, so a dwarf wall might be this high. But then he goes, but for someone else who's smaller, it might be this high. He goes, yeah. What do you think? And then all of a sudden, the person's not thinking about the pain anymore, and he's just like, bang, straight into it. Yeah. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, that's a nice one. That's clever.
Well, it brings us on to something you were talking about before actually we started recording, which was you're training yourself for some kettlebell sport. You've kind of made a commitment to suffer for a little while, and you've got yourself a Russian kettlebell coach and a proper kettlebell instructor, someone who's she's a world champion, isn't she?
She is, yeah, she is.
And she has a different view to motivation and why don't you take us through some of the comments that she's had, which are they're a different kind of pattern interrupt, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying before to you guys that like it's been an interesting experience because I've kind of gone down the road of hard style training with kettlebells for the last decade or so. And I realized about a year ago that I just sort of brushed away sports style like it wasn't a real form of training, or like it wasn't as useful as hard style, or whatever I told myself, like I didn't need to pay it attention. And then I started watching a few more videos on it, which is difficult when you don't do the sport because it's quite boring to watch if you don't do the sport and know what's happening in terms of the technique you're seeing. And I decided, in a similar way to my pursuit of jiu-jitsu, that like I think it's better to learn from smaller people in that world, because you'll end up learning, rightly or wrongly, this assumption, it was just my assumption, you'll end up learning better technique rather than technique that you can muscle your way through. And as someone who's inclined to muscle their way through things, I sort of need to be pulled back a little bit and have someone have a sort of tight hold on the reins. But it was an experience in relearning discomfort, because 1 to 5 reps at a time is uncomfortable, but for such a short amount of time, almost anyone can put up with it. But 10-minute long cycle sets seem like they go on forever. And the discomfort of them was a completely new experience. So I talk to my clients about accommodating discomfort. You take someone who's a complete newbie lifter, the nuance of their physiological experience of pain is very narrow. They don't really have a way to delineate between pain, I stubbed my toe, pain, I cut my hand by accident with a knife, pain, I'm exercising. It's all pain. And actually what you're there to do, at least I see myself as what I'm there to do, is give them more of a vocabulary for contextualizing these states of pain or states of discomfort. And actually I tend to say, we never want to train in pain. Discomfort's okay, pain is not okay. But then giving people a nuanced vocabulary for describing that to me, especially as a back pain specialist, you want someone to not just say, yeah, that hurts, but it creates a tingle or a burning sensation or a catching or a shooting. You want people to really be able to describe their pain. So having done this for a long time with clients, I thought, you know what, I'm going to defer to the world champion here and ask her, how do you contextualize and accommodate this level and this duration of discomfort? There must be techniques, distraction, playlists, like all sorts of, my mind was running wild with all the sorts of amazing ideas she might come back with for how I could integrate discomfort in a new way into my workout that wouldn't stop me from getting to my goal. And all she had to say back was, think of the shame you will bring on me if you fail. So I mean, I love it every time I tell that story. I love it every time because it's always unbelievable to me that that's what she came back with.
If you would have said it with a straight face as well.
Yeah. I was just going to say, going back to the Karate Kid kind of thing, it's almost like, pain does not exist in this dojo, does it? Weakness does not exist in this dojo, does it? It's just like, boom, just
punching the rope wound boards as blood pours out of your hands. There's no such thing as pain. I'm experiencing it. I don't know.
It's definitely a Russian sport, I think, isn't it?
It really is. It really
we
is.
had David Cohen on the podcast months ago now, didn't we?
Ages ago.
Keown, sorry, not Cohen. David Keown, who did the 2 hours long cycle with double 16s. And was it around, it was close to 700 reps he did, wasn't it?
It was 620 or something. He reckons he could do more.
But the way he
done it
described
2 weeks earlier, hadn't he?
Yeah, the way he described it was, he's got the bells, and every now and then, because he's doing it in a public forum with judges and everything, someone would come and just put a bit of banana in his mouth that he could eat, and he'd open his hands and they were covered in blood, and they just sprinkled chalk into them, and then he'd carry on, and that's
He also said he thinks he could do more now because he's a bigger guy now and all that sort of stuff. But he reckons he thinks he could do more, but he reckons there's loads of people around the world who could easily beat his record.
But no one wants to do it.
It's a world record. But nobody's going to bother, because who wants to do a 2 hour long side?
I get it. I get that.
But you'll know from training, because we would train. We only had a brief training session, didn't we? We would train about an hour.
Yeah.
And
50-50 conversation and exercise, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. It was, but I mean, you're using 224, so you know the difference if you jump from 16, 20, 24.
Exponential,
It can only be like 2 kilos or 4 kilos, 8 kilos, and it feels like a wholly different experience.
Oh, completely. The extrapolated force, the difference in the forces you have to accommodate, it's so big. It's been quite an experience going down that journey. I still can't quite give up my way of training, the hard style, training. and that's something that's gotten me into trouble with my coach. She doesn't like to hear that I do your workouts, but I do mine too, or I do your workouts and then straight afterwards I do mine as well. So she's like, well, obviously you're getting tired and you can't complete the sets if you're training 6 days a week. And
this is interesting. So I mean, like sometimes it's easy in a strength conditioning world to think that everything's going to the solution to fix the problem is more strength.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. So obviously, are you just doing the sport in order to be good at the sport, or are you doing some kind of strength and conditioning in a traditional sense outside that? How does it work for you? Because obviously your Instagram's got you squatting with a heavy bell, snatching stuff, and that looks like a conditioning workout, or is that just something you're showing people?
So like the main focus of my Instagram really is to teach what I know, that's hard style, and to teach, or to hopefully instill to a certain extent a love of kettlebells, because I think actually it will free people from the shackles of gyms a lot of the time. I think a lot of people get stuck in the mindset that you can only get fit at a gym, or you need machines, or you need equipment as far as the eye can see in order to get a workout done. And actually what my aim is with my Instagram is to break down a movement. It could be as simple as a swing, a clean, whatever. Simple but not easy, and break it down and make it easier to understand and easier to implement for the general population. Then there's those sort of workouts where I'm trying to give them value of, like, you just need to press play here and follow along. Why I started sport training was because I like learning. I think it's important to have your ego in check all the time. And so I sort of search things out that do that for me, whether it's, whether it's jujitsu or sport training or strength training. You get to a point with all of it where you think, I know what I'm doing here. And that's about the time where you need to find a new way to challenge yourself in that same skill, or a new skill to challenge the way that you learn. And for me, I am a massive advocate of kettlebells. I think the kettlebell, we could talk about this if you like, is the single best piece of equipment you could buy. If you're going to invest your money in one piece of equipment, if let's say, for argument's sake, if you owned a single 16-kilo kettlebell, you can train every muscle in every plane of motion from now until the end of your life. It will never need a service. It stores easily. It's never going to run out, or what, it's the easiest piece of equipment to own. And if you know how to use it, if you don't know how to use it in straight lines: squat, pull, press, real simple. If you know how to use it, the options are quite literally endless. From juggling to strength work to sport training, it's quite literally endless. But I felt like, despite the fact that I'm a lover of kettlebells, I didn't know 50% of it, which is sport training. So I just thought, you know what, let's see how tough this is. And I make jokes about how much I hate it, but I love it. I love how hard it is. I love being crap at something. Because it's not just about, can I pick up a heavier object, but actually, can I improve my technique, is so much more pleasurable in many ways than just having the joint aches associated to just heavier and heavier get-ups or heavier and heavier pressing or whatever.
This is one of the things, isn't it? When you get people who might look at something and go, well, I've done that, I've tried, we've spoke about this before, I've tried that, I've done that, and it didn't work, or whatever, and they've tried it for a couple of weeks and stuff like that. And then you look at someone like Denis Vasilev, who's what's he, 38, 39, he's got 11 world champions or whatever, championships or whatever, most ever, he's the best of all time, and he's still working on his technique, because as he gets older he'll need to anyway, but it can always be improved slightly more. So, if someone, this is what we try to instill on the podcast, is like, if you've tried something and you didn't like it, that's fine. But if you've tried it and you didn't think it didn't work, and you've tried it for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, just stick at it until it, because there's so many nuances. And even the thing that you said about, like, earlier when we were talking about the back specialist stuff, and you said you know, you went to that first course and you realized all this stuff that you realized what you didn't know. Unconscious incompetence, isn't it? It's like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the start of the learning process. And then once you're there, there's so much in front of you. And this is what I try to kind of get people to realize, is like, this is the beginning of a, it's not the beginning of a very long journey, because no one wants to hear that, but it's the beginning of the beginning. And if you stick at it, all these other kind of avenues open up, don't they? And then
I think all of this is like, I sort of look at it through the lens of a video game. Sometimes you start off with your avatar that's incapable. It doesn't, if you think of your sort of Grand Theft Auto avatar, he can run a bit but gets tired. He's not very strong. He's not very capable. He doesn't have many options. And all this stuff is about increasing our options. The world is an amazing place. And I don't train just to be better at training, but I train because I'm the only dad in the playground that's doing cartwheels with my son and running around doing roly-polies, and because it allows my body to not get in the way of my imagination, and allows my body to get out of the way of me enjoying my son and my family and life and hiking and whatever. Like, it just completely blows the doors open on options.
Yeah, if I want to jump and walk along a tree trunk with my 6-year-old because they're playing in the woods, I can do that. I don't have to worry about jumping off it and my knees going, or my balance going, or being, I mean, my son this morning, he said, I want to run to school. So it was about 3/4 of a mile and he wanted to run. So
you let him go, yeah?
Yeah, I let him go. He's just like, I just said, just watch some of the, the lorries. Just get out of the way of them.
Yeah, and I'll see you at the gates at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the 3-year-old. We've lost a few 3-year-olds that way, but
I just want to pause there, because you just said something which I'm going to nick, if you don't mind.
I've just written it down.
You've got to quote me for the first 3 times. You quote me for the first 3 times, and then it's yours. That's another Dan John line, and I'm not going to quote him again.
This is true, but you've just said something that I say in my way the whole time is move towards freedom, right? I've even got it tattooed on my chest, right? Because the whole thing is like,
KB6 underneath your tattoo now. That you've got to add.
Okay, instead, but you've put me off now. I forgot what I was going to say. No. So move towards freedom, because I keep saying, like, people are locked by their bodies, and they see someone like go and hike in mountains and this and that. And they're going, I'd love to be able to do that. And it's like, well, you can. And you've just said my body does not get in the way of my imagination, which is a way better way of saying it. So
you'd have to pay more for
laser removal and get that tattoo.
I'll get a cover up done.
But the guy who came up with "Let's Ready to Rumble," he sues people whenever they use that.
Do you say that a lot, or did you just make that up on the spot?
No, I do say that a lot. That's one of those things that it's mine. No.
You better get copyrighted on that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's something I sort of obsess over, because I love training, and I love the progress of accumulating whatever numbers, better times with long cycle, more reps, whatever. I do love that process, but it's not the point. The point of it all is so that when we go on holiday and you see a mountain, I'm like, why not? Let's go to the top of it. And I don't have to think about if I can. There's very little, this sounds super arrogant, but there's very little I physically can't do, right? Like, you just sort of pick something. Try surfing, try hiking, whatever. It doesn't matter, because, and it's not a lot of time. Like, if we're talking to our client base right now, all you have to do is find 20 minutes 4 times a week, let's say. Because you can smash yourself in 20 minutes 4 times a week. You can get stronger, you can get fitter, you can get better in 20 minutes 4 times a week. And I always say 4 is the magic number, because instead of 3, that was growing up for me, everyone's number was, I got to the gym 3 times a week, or I exercised 3 times a week. That's still the minority of your time. But you add 1 day to that, and all of a sudden it's 4 out of 7. That's the majority of your time, taking strides towards health progress. And as a result, you flip a switch where the way you think about food changes, because you're training the majority of the time. So your food is not an obsession. You're just thinking, how am I eating correctly? And then that switches off after a few months because it becomes a habit. But if you're doing that 20-minute workout 4 times a week, in a year's time, you're going to have so many more options when you're out with your kids, when you're walking with your wife, when you're on holiday. You've just got options, and that more options is never a bad thing when you're talking about the world and life and what you've got to choose from.
Honestly, you've made my day with that. I love that. I absolutely love it. Seriously, seriously.
You know what? It was actually, it's been a really difficult thing to let go of the pursuit of pure strength, but Professor McGill forced me to do that, because at his I was going to say conference, but at the weekend, at the sort of week-long training that I did with him in Eindhoven, during one of the lunch breaks, we were in a facility that had a really beautiful gym. So I thought, I know, I'm going to be the biggest ape in the room and show everyone what I can pull off the floor. And I started deadlifting, and he just sort of wandered over in his very sort of demure way. He's not got a big energy when he's in the room. He's very subtle in the way that he sort of moves around. And he had spotted me from the atrium deadlifting, and he came down. He was like, you know what, you deadlift really well. And I thought, like, yeah, that's all I needed, brilliant. And he paused long enough for me to indulge in that comment before he stripped it away and said, I know girls that deadlift way more than that. And I said, okay, where's this going? He said, you're never going to be the strongest lifter in the room. You're never going to win competitions. You're never going to be the strongest lifter in the commercial gym that I go to. So why are you doing this when what you should really be doing is focusing on being an 80-year-old that can still move well with his grandkids?
Yeah.
And actually, it took me probably a year after that to really relinquish the urge to just lift heavier and heavier, because it's fun and it's fun to be strong. But actually being satisfied with a certain level of strength, which I've built and can now sort of rest on, that is my foundation, and not pursuing, more calories for more kilos and more calories for more kilos. That, it's quite a suffocating way to live. It's very narrow. And for him to have said to me, like, what is this for? You don't compete. You never got on the platform. What's this for? Rather focus on being pain-free when you're 80.
We've had that with Paul McElroy when he's been on, friend of the show. And he's been on a couple of times, and he talks about expanding your comfort zone. So it is kind of pure strength, but it's not chasing a number, and it's not chasing to compete or anything like that. Because he's like, unless you're a professional powerlifter or you're competing at something, there's no need to ever peak at all. So what he talks about is you just grow your comfort zone until it encompasses something that used to be your peak. So you can now do that easily. So you're never actually, you're obviously pushing your limit, but you're never pushing your limit by going at it and trying to force it. And I think that's amazing, because I mean, he works with us guys, and my strength has gone up loads without ever feeling like I'm doing a lot or doing too much.
I always say to some clients, I mean, not everyone always gets it, but it's like, what happens if your workout could be, your currently what's challenging to you, which is an all-out expression of your strength. What happens if that was just a workout?
Yeah.
What happens if you could do that 5 days a week and not blink an eyelid and just, oh, right, I'm going to deadlift 1.5 body weight easy and get up the next day and do it if someone asked me to. But at the moment, they're having to slap themselves in the face and down a whiskey to get even close, But
that's where the comment
is an interesting one.
Yeah. But that's where the comment he comes up with was like, any rep max goes up, every rep max goes up.
Yeah. Right.
So you using 224s in long cycle. Is it long cycle you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nutter. You doing
by choice as well. That was an ignorant choice. That was an ignorant choice.
It's all a choice, isn't it? It's just
it is.
It's you doing that. You know, you're expanding your comfort zone every time, aren't you? And then so 224s actually become something you can just do and do well.
Yeah.
But then you look at the guys who do the 232s and be like, Jesus, like, because Dennis, when he does that, you just watch it and you're just like,
unreal. I was watching him do the 32 kilo snatch for 10 minutes. I tried to keep that pace for 30 seconds and my hands will fall off, and I cannot comprehend that.
I don't even know how you do it.
It's unbelievable.
It's when
I was trying to use the 228s and I got them overhead once and I was that's too much work.
One and I'm done anyway.
I just thought I've got to go back to what I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
I was just going to say, it's when you start actually training in any sport, you then get the recognition of the level that the people are at that you watch, isn't it? If you've never done kettlebells or tried kettlebell sport, you can't comprehend, 224s or 232, 232s. And if you've never, like running, like the guys who run a marathon in, 2 hours or just over 2 hours, and most people couldn't run 400 meters at that pace, and they're running it for 2 hours. So it's just when you actually engage in the sport yourself, the level of respect you have for the people just goes up through the roof, doesn't it? So
precisely,
it's incredible.
Well, that's been a big part of the journey, like all of this is discovery. I've been first times I went to the gym was when I was 14. My dad used to take me and we used to go together, and I'm 36 now, so it's been 20 plus years of training. And to your point, Peter, about never sort of training at 100%, but your every weight becoming more accessible. Again, it was sort of COVID that gave me that gift in a way, because we were at home and I needed to create more routine, and a routine that I could repeat every day so I didn't lose my mind. I never trained like it to sort of 85% plus intensity. I just never went near it. And as a result, I trained almost every single day throughout the whole of COVID. And that's something that I caught a bunch of flack for from a lot of my peers, because it was like, you have to rest, you need to rest. And it's not that I'm saying you don't need to rest. You absolutely do. But if you're training sub-maximally, and if you're training for the love of training, not necessarily for progress, it's joy of movement, not necessarily creating muscle fiber tears and impacting your joints and all of that sort of stuff. And if again you're smart about programming, then you're never creating stress accumulations in the same place, and you can emphasize certain modes of training one day and other modes of training another, work in some planes of motion one day and other planes another. And it was just by actual happenstance that just before all the lockdowns of 2020, I decided to have a go at Dan John's 10,000 swing program. I'm not as massive a fanboy as it makes it sound like I am. So I've mentioned him a bunch. I'm a big fan, but I just happened to be doing his workout. And then Boris Johnson announced the lockdown, and I thought this couldn't be better timing if I tried, because all I need is the kettlebell I have, and I can get this exact program done no matter where I am. And again, just to refer to something you said earlier about someone trying something and abandoning it, you don't know swings until you've done 10,000 in a month.
He's Dan John's a friend of the show, actually, and he
way.
he's been on 5 times.
More than me.
So he's a best friend of the show. A best friend of the show. 5 times.
Best friend of the show.
Gold
He's
star,
almost
right?
married to us.
He was saying this is interesting, because he was saying I don't know if it was when he put the 10,000 swing challenge out or whatever. But when he used to write for different, like Breaking Muscle in different, or like submit articles to them and stuff like that, and he'd submit an article and have a program at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said within like 20 minutes of the program going out, someone had already been telling him how you could modify it and make it better. And he's like, what are you talking? You can't have done it. So
Right.
do it first and then tell me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was absolutely ridiculous. And it's,
Yeah.
no, you don't want to do that. You want to do this. It's like, how do you know? Have you done it? So Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're doing the 10,000 swing challenge in 20 minutes. So that would be some kind of world record.
My God, not even Dennis could do that one.
Well, I think that's a good place to finish. I've got one last question before I wrap up.
Is it for James? Because he's been quite quiet. So
did the shame work? Did the threat of shame?
Did the shame work? No, it really didn't. You know what? It did the exact reverse of what I think she was hoping it was going to do. I come from such a coddled part of the world that I thought, well, if that's where you've set your sort of marker for success, I'm so far off that it was really demotivating. And actually, I went back to her and I said, like, you are by a million miles a better sport coach than I am. But here you've missed the trick because you don't know your client here. So here, you know, we've spoken many times, but you need to be more versatile as a coach. And we were speaking about our, you know, individual coaching styles, and there was like a mutual respect in coaching. It wasn't like I was just wagging my finger at her. I said to her, this is one of those moments where I think you needed to step back for a moment, look at the person in front of you and recognize that I was actually asking for an olive branch there. I was really appealing for something to help me over a hurdle I couldn't get over. And what you gave me was something that just basically fobbed me off and said, like, just keep pushing, don't be a wuss, you know, whatever that sort of like whistleblower, Marine commander type mindset. It wasn't just like drop and give me more type thing. It just didn't work for me. I was at my limit for how much I could tolerate in the program and in the week and in the larger 3 months, 6 months that I've been working with her. And I was really looking for some support. And what she said was, you're letting me down, or don't let me down. And actually it led to me saying, do you know what? I think what I'm going to do is take a break for the next couple months from working with her directly and go back to having a bit more freedom in the way that I train. Because I've done this a decade, having spent 8 months working directly with her, I felt I could take over my own programming and incorporate the sports style lifts that I wanted to, and the kind of training that give me a feeling of success and progress in a bit more of a tangible way into a program that would continually progress me, but possibly not at the pace that she wanted if I was just focusing on one sport and one discipline, but would enable me to stretch out my motivation over a longer period of time because I got positive feedback. It's something that Professor Huberman talks about on the Huberman Lab podcast, is the relationship between failure and progress, and how it's been studied. And what we need is actually to have around 80 to 85% success, because otherwise that experience of failure is undermining to the dopamine and the endorphins that we get, and just kind of strips away your will to try. And what I was finding, that after that conversation that I'd had with her, that I would procrastinate so much before workouts. And the moment I felt a sort of 3-minute discomfort of long cycle, I put the weights down. I thought, you know what, I'm not prepared to even get to the place that she wants me to get to before I let her down. I'm not even going to try. And at least if I stop at 3 minutes, I know that I could have done more, but I'm just not prepared to sort of put up with that level of discomfort. It took too much for me to get there. So I needed a break from that kind of coaching.
Yeah, it is a sport where there is a barrier to entry, and it's often not a physical one, isn't it? It's
a really, really mental sport. And I don't mean like crazy. I mean, like, it's very, you know, whatever monologue is happening, you need to have good control over your mindset during that.
Like ultra marathons, mountaineering, stuff like that. You know,
it's really interesting. I mean, like, shall we have a chat for another hour as well? Because you've just opened up another avenue there. No, but you've just opened up another avenue there of people starting out in fitness, as in your end user, as in the listener to this podcast who wants to get started. And like, it's hard, and you know, there's a mental side to it, and I don't know how to get over that, let alone the physical side. It doesn't matter where you are on that continuum. You're way along the line on that. You've been training since you were 14 years old, and it still happens to you.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's fine. It's okay. It's okay for that to happen. because it will always happen.
You're allowed to
Whatever
fail.
you get to, it will always happen.
I think it's important. It's part of the character building process of it, and it's part of in each stage of your life, you'll have different pursuits that you enjoy. You might hate running now, but actually later on love it. And what I tend to say to my clients when they ask me about how should they be training, what is the best kind of cardio, you know, these sort of pejorative questions you get, my answer is almost always a question, and it's, what do you like to do? Because if I tell you that you've got to do a 5K every week and you hate it, you're never going to do it, and you're going to hate me for asking you to do it. So let's lean into the things you love. And actually, if what I tend to say to a lot of my clients is that there might be some part of this session that you do for me, but the rest of it will do for you. So if we need to spend some time building skill and having you build a bit of frustration, then that's okay, because what I'm going to give you and what we're going to end on is you feeling triumphant and you feeling like a champion and feeling like you've progressed. Because when we revisit this moment of frustration in a month's time, it won't be there. You won't notice. I'm going to remind you with either a video or reminding you of this conversation. And then you're going to get that endorphin hit and that good feeling and more motivation from the thing that used to frustrate you, because we've bolstered it with things you were good at.
Great place to end. Great place to end. Well, Glenn, absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so
this has
much.
been a really, really fun conversation.
Absolutely.
So, James, is there anything?
I was just to say, first of all, Glenn, where can people? I mean, I obviously follow you on social media and things like that, but what's the best place for people to first become introduced to you and to follow what you do and to find out a bit more? Where would you like people to go as their first?
The easiest places are my YouTube and my Instagram. That's where I put most of the content up, is on Instagram, and there's a link on my Instagram profile to the YouTube as well, where I can kind of go into a slightly longer form. But it's the KB6, KB the number 6 IX, because it was taken. The KB6 was taken. Sort of nicked again. Last time I'm going to mention his name, from Dan John, the 6 modes of training: push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry, and the 6th movement. And that's why it's the KB6. Did
you do your hard style training with Dan, or is that?
I did a course with him at St. Mary's University in Twickenham.
Ah, okay.
Just a short story. That I was on a strength training course. There's 25 S&C coaches, and you can picture what that room looks like. 25 mainly male S&C coaches. Dan John walks in the room. Has anyone used kettlebells before? And like an idiot, I was the first to put my hand up. Absolutely, I'm awesome at them. So he goes, grab that 40. This is probably a good 4 years ago, so I was quite a bit less trained and weaker than I am now, but 40 was a bit of a challenge. I started swinging the 40, and he started drilling that thing down between my legs, like really pushing that kettlebell back into the eccentric phase of the swing in front of everyone in the room. And all I'm thinking is like, do not fail. The entire room will lose respect for you. It was one of those moments that I sort of gained a bit of respect from him, I think, and consolidated my love for kettlebells in that moment. So I learned a lot from him that weekend.
Excellent. No, that's fantastic. No, it's been great. It's been great conversation, and just I'm not really sure, but I think probably your Instagram is fantastic, and it is very very educational. I'd really recommend people to go and find you there. But I think the conversation we've had has been far more nuanced and gone deeper than I thought it would. So it's been great. I can recommend Cobra Kai though, if you haven't watched it.
Okay, I'll have to give it a try.
It's very, very stupid. I watch it with my wife. It's funny. It's very retro, and Johnny Lawrence is sort of the hero. So yeah, I'd highly recommend watching Cobra Kai.
As long as someone is doing a crane kick, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I'll be happy. Well, thanks so much for having me, guys.
Have you got any questions, Peter?
No. I just that was honestly, that was a great conversation. It's refreshing to hear that sort of approach to training and how you train your clients and all that sort of stuff. And obviously that thing. So number one, you said it's boring to watch kettlebell sport, and me and James are off to do that on Saturday for a day.
No, you do the sport, so you know it's not boring, but try and get someone who doesn't use a kettlebell to watch that sport.
No, I get that. But yeah, that's what we're doing on Saturday. We're driving 2.5 hours each to go there and do it. So like,
Nice.
yeah, brilliant.
That sounds like fun to me, but
I might not
I'm an outlier. So,
but like I say, also you've made my day and kind of ruined it at the same time, because I really wish I'd have said that.
and now you're going to go get a new tattoo. Oh, it's going to be so.
But no, honestly, that I love that. I'm going to quote you on that quite a lot.
I was going to say though, Pete, if you get the tattoo done with Glen's quote, it would probably cost you more money if they charge by the letter.
Yeah, they don't. But if I get a tattoo, that makes it mine anyway, doesn't it?
Yeah. Depends who gets it first, Pete.
Yeah, I'll race you. I only just had one last week, actually, so I'm not going to be doing that.
Oh, then what'd you get last week?
I got my dog's paw done on my ribs.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah.
You're going to take the top off soon, and you're just going to be full of tattoos.
I've got a squiggle on my ribs, so there's no judgment from me.
Well, there you go then.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. Well, on that note, please like and subscribe. Glen, thanks so much again for coming on. So yeah, please follow the podcast, share this, join our Health Oddity Facebook group. And obviously, if you're new to the podcast, go and check our back catalogue. This is episode 108. So there's 107 other episodes that you should check out with some of the best strength and conditioning coaches that are out there. Stuart McGill's there, we've been talking about. Dan John's there, who we've been talking about. Ton of other guests, thought leaders in their area, excellent kind of individuals when it comes to training. So open your mind to a different way of doing things. Thanks a lot again. This has been Health Oddity.
You've been listening to Health Oddity with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthoddity.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.